All right, we'll go ahead and get started. It is 11:03 a.m. Today is January 27th of 2023, and this is Coffee with Community Services with Alta California Regional Center. This is John Decker, the Director of Community Services, and I'll introduce some of the community services folks and regional center staff that we have on. From our community services department, I see Odelia this morning. Good morning, and Dan as well, and our manager Jordan Eller. Good morning, and
Good morning.
I see our HCBS specialist Alicia and our employment specialist Carly on here as well. And good morning to Isabella, another one of our specialists, and my assistant Zach on. Good morning. Let's see, we've got other specialists on. We've got Shirley, who's going to talk with us a little bit about day programs and a message that some day programs are going to be receiving. And let's see, we've got Danny on from Community Services and Damien and Leah as well. We've got Rima, our deaf and hard of hearing specialist, who is on here. Good morning. And I already talked to Michelle McDonald, but she's on here as well. And Jason, our community services specialist. Let's see, Christy's on here as well from our community services, and Adriana as well from our community services department. I know Helen will be joining shortly. We've got some client services managers on here too. So I see Wyatt this morning. Good morning, Wyatt. And let's see, and Heidi from Grass Valley. Good morning, Heidi, as well. And I see Veronica from Woodlands over there. And what's got Jolana down there? Hello, one of our service coordinators who's on. She's on my front page, so I get to call her out. And I see Cindy Lay, community services alumni and client services manager. So welcome. Sorry if I missed folks or if you're logging in right now, but we've got a bit of an agenda. And so we're going to go through and talk about that a little bit. So the plan for today is to discuss the following items. So we are going to be discussing the January billing and the rate increases. We are going to be talking about early start and 637 request. We're going to continue to discuss about the transportation directive that was given related to the monthly reimbursement rates. We are going to have Shirley give us a little discussion about remote services and day programs. Michelle's going to talk with us about tailored day services and our change of process that we have. She's also going to be going over the new HCBS directive. And then I think her and I see Alicia is on here as well, but we'll get an update on our current numbers, which I am very excited about. We'll get into that. And again, a little bit more information about, let's see here. Oh, sorry, and rate letters. We'll give a little update about rate letters as well related to things. So with that being said, I do want to talk about upcoming things like vendor forums. And I know there's been a lot of discussions about ILS, so I'll kind of try to save that more towards the end, and we'll go from there. We did have a board meeting, that went into the evening last night. It was the longest board meeting I think that we've had in 3 years, because for the most part, the board of Alta California Regional Centers was together in the conference room at Alta, and I think really for the first time having that many folks. So it was Michelle Ramirez was there. She's our board. Is it a board delegate or is it just considered a board member?
I'm the PAC board rep.
PAC board rep. And so that's one thing to remember. Not only do we have a provider advisory committee that advises the regional center and is supposed to be someone that we are communicating regularly with related to information from the Department of Developmental Services, but we also have a vendor that sits on our board as well. And so I think what's nice about that is it gives that service provider perspective to our board, because there's a lot of regional center staff that are there. But again, it is nice. And I do appreciate you service providers that are willing to do things like, volunteer to be part of our provider advisory committee or be, willing to at least attend those meetings as well, or come to our board meetings. We do get some board members that will show up, some service providers that will show up from time to time, but certainly, I think it's important to know what's going on at an agency level at the board of directors. So we did a training at our board of directors meeting yesterday, and the training that we did was the same training that you all have received. So we trained our board of directors on the end of alternative services, the beginning of remote services, and the changes to tailored day services. And so Michelle Johnson, our director of client services, and myself talked about that, and it was very nice. Michelle talked about the training that we provided to the service coordinators as well, and highlighted Cindy Lay and her training that she did, and really having a person-centered process in those meetings for remote services and for tailored day services. So it was very nice, Cindy. They appreciated knowing that the case management staff have really focused on this being driven by client choice and client decision, these modifications to services. So shout out to Cindy for being willing to do that training as well. So with that though, and I think this is a good kind of segue into it, Shirley and Michelle, is that there's some questions that have been coming up, and I'm hoping Shirley can kind of touch on what those questions have been, and then we've been getting some feedback from our client services associate client services directors that that the letter we're going to send out hopefully will clear a few things up for folks. So I'll ask Shirley to go for it.
Hi, good morning, all. I have been asked to share a little bit about some of the input I've had in questions from service coordinators as well as from some of our providers regarding billing for phone calls, particularly. One of the discussions we've had is what kind of phone call is it? If you are checking in with a client because they've requested check-ins daily or weekly of some kind, if you're just calling to say hi and chat for a few minutes, that is not a billable service. A billable service would be something that is directly related to a client's goals, regardless of what their goals are. So if you have a scheduled conversation with a client that involves, say, for example, they are working on building a resume because they're interested in employment. And so perhaps you would review the progress towards that resume, talk about it, make suggestions. If they want to practice doing an interview with you, that's something that could be accomplished via a phone call if they weren't interested in being, present with you in a Zoom meeting. And so there's a lot of different ways, as long as it's goal oriented, and it would be addressing meeting a goal that the client has on their IPP, then that certainly could be a billable service. But just to fulfill that client's need to say hi and chat with you about the Kings game last night, for example, would not be a billable service. Any questions about that? Not seeing any hands up.
I love it when you say things so succinctly, Shirley, that it all. Now let's see. We're going to send it out in writing to folks, and let's see.
We are doing that,
so
John.
We'll see if we still get no responses once people get it in writing. Usually, it's a little bit different.
It
we
sure
found
is.
that. I think Alicia and Michelle found that out about the HCBS letter that they've been sending out. That once people get that thing in writing and they read it, it's a little bit different. So again, I looked at the content of it, and certainly, at the end of the day, have that planning team discussion. I mean, if there's,
Yes.
you need to get the support of the planning team. If you feel like the service coordinator is not, fully understanding it, there's been a lot of changes that have gone on. One of the things that is beautiful, though, is that very frequently we have the client services managers that are part of these meetings as well. And so they're able to hear, a lot of this feedback related to what the expectations should be when it comes to these types of services. So I would just, as I've said kind of throughout the time that I've been the community services director, and definitely throughout COVID and the state of emergency, is that if you're running into barriers as a service provider and you feel like it's because the service coordinator may or may not be fully aware of all of the kind of changes that have gone on constantly, you may reach out to the manager and try to get clarification from their manager. If it's a big, widespread issue and it's going across the entire agency, talking to your community services specialist, maybe, bringing in Michelle or bringing in Helen, one of the managers, or Jordan in a situation like that. But we want to ensure that you as providers are getting those responses and that you understand the why. And so appreciate, Shirley, you explaining the why to folks here. And so we'll allow folks, if they do want to have any questions related to that, they can certainly also put them in the chat there as well. So thank you very much for that. All right, so tailored day services and new process. I know we did a reporting to our board about the kind of number of folks that have looked at bringing on tailored day services to their vendorizations. I don't know if we have an update to that, but I think we've also looked at our internal processes. So I'm going to throw it over to Michelle to give us a little bit of an update as it relates to kind of authorizing tailored day services.
Thanks, John. Can you hear me? I'm not muted, right? Okay.
Perfect.
So, thank you. So we have, received feedback from our clients, our service providers, and our case management on our process. So we worked at streamlining that for referrals for tailored day service. So moving forward, staff service coordinators no longer need to staff these requests with Adult Services Committee. It will be based on client choice, the planning team discussion, and then they will staff with their client service manager that need and then input that POS for that. The only reason that a SC would staff at Adult Services Committee for Tailored Day is just seeking resources in the area. So that's kind of our transition and our change in our process for that.
Any questions about that? Again, this was certainly a request from a number of service providers that we look at streamlining things, since the department has decided to streamline things, that we should also look at streamlining things at our regional centers. So again, if there are big delays or something like that that are coming up in the development of this, there was a question about, I believe staffing is also required for more than 92 hours a month. Yes, if you are looking at having a day program that is going to be more than the total number of days, what was it, divided by total number of hours divided by 4, something like that. Anyways, the 92 hours, if you're going to be going over that amount, that's going to put you over an amount for tailored day services. So yes, that would be something that we would look at staffing. But I think everyone that is doing tailored day services is now signing something that's saying that they're going to be following what the regulations are related to it. And so the 4 hours per month is, the 92 hours would be that full time at 4. But we also know that it's not necessarily only 4 hours a day though. That is allowable. So, all right, tailored day services. Any other questions about that? All right, thank you very much for that update. I want to bring up a couple different things, and then I'm going to jump into HCBS because HCBS might be kind of a little bit of a larger discussion. So one thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm looking at it right now on my phone, which is this awesome picture of the staff over at On My Own doing a huge in-person training that they were having. And I love pictures like this. And some of you are aware that I, along with Zach, help edit our newsletter for our agency. And I have been able to include a few vendor stories in there. We certainly have a place for our provider advisory committee in there. I think I had a few pictures of Dream Theater participating in like a winter parade as well. So, I guess I would open it up. If you are interested in having maybe your agency featured, like there's something cool that your agency did, like, hey, we brought in this trainer and they trained our staff to do this. A lot of you do amazing things to support your staff, or if you had like a staff recognition event or something like that, and you might be interested in seeing if we could put that in our newsletter for our regional center. I'd be up for that. I'm interested in showcasing all the awesome things that you guys are doing, not just the things that we're doing at our Alta offices. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up, and Zach is going to be the one because his email box is a lot more capacity in it than mine does. So Zach is going to be the person. He's going to drop his email into the chat. And if you as a service provider, and there's a bunch of you on right now, we've got 84 folks on, and about 14 of them are regional center staff. So for the rest of you that are providers, would love to be able to, and we've got a newsletter that comes out every quarter. So would love to be able to include some pictures of, this is a great big happy group of people getting their training, and that's an awesome picture and an awesome story to tell about getting people back together in person in the office. But if there's other things that you're doing with your staff and you'd like to have that, kind of shared a little bit more widely, I think that we can look at making a space for that. So thoughts about that? Is that something that service providers might be interested in doing? Awesome. that overwhelming yell of happiness that I heard from everyone about doing this is recorded, and I will make sure that Zach will keep his inbox as empty as possible so that we can see the pictures that come flowing in. What would be great too, if you did send us a picture, is maybe like a sentence or two about what the event is or like what it was. That would be helpful as well. So appreciate it if folks could do that. Again, for our newsletter, we've been focusing on like the artists that we have at our regional center. So for the last year, we've been focusing on folks that are participating in those programs. Last month we did micro enterprise, and so I just wanted to provide another opportunity to highlight some of the things that you all are doing as service providers as well. All right, I'm going to throw it over to Dan Kilmer because I don't know that everyone is aware of housing access services and what we envisioned with housing access services, kind of who the vendor is. And so Dan and I and Jordan had a good meeting yesterday with them. And I just wanted to kind of have Dan just give a snapshot of what that service does, and take it away, Dan.
Yeah, well, thank you, John. So it's a First Step Housing Access Services. It's Alta's first housing access service provider. They've been vendor for a little over a year now, and the overwhelming response to the service is quite overwhelming for the provider, as they are staffing up to handle the volume of clients that have housing needs. So just a real quick, there's 3 prongs to the service. One is for housing access, right? So getting housing. Their primary clientele, those that are bouncing between family members or they're homeless. The second prong is for a crisis housing service, right? So if a client is, been issued an eviction notice, right, then they could bump that up as a priority and get in there and work with these landlords and tenants to hopefully save their housing if at all possible. And the third prong to the service is the tenancy and sustainability of their current housing, right? So if they already have housing, then they can assist our clients to maintain that. So if there's issues with landlords, they can go in and work both sides of it to ensure that clients are working well with their landlords. So a few things here. They're really involved in getting housing vouchers. So there's that the initial application to get that going. The renewals, they'll help our clients with renewals for those vouchers. And let me see here. And okay, so that's about it for the 3 prongs to the service. And I always tell people this is no magic wand. When a referral is sent to First Step Housing Access Services, it doesn't mean they have housing for your client right away. It can take a month, it can take 6 months. It depends on the needs of your clients. Then a couple things they do. When a referral first comes in, they will conduct a thorough housing assessment. And then from there, they will develop an individual housing plan. And there are cases where clients are dealing with personal issues that are barring them, or there's barriers to housing. And so during their assessment, don't be surprised if you see them list some of their issues that they probably want to go off and resolve before they can get them moving forward with housing. So if they're actively, have a criminal record or criminal, crime that they're dealing with, there's things like that may need to get resolved before they can help them with housing. Let me see here. Yeah, so that's just a quick overview. If you have any, other further questions or need more information, you can contact me directly. I can put my contact info in the chat box. Otherwise, John, is there anything else that you want me to touch on?
No, I'm also going to drop in the chat box real quickly the first edition of our newsletter, because that's where we did the feature about housing access services. So if folks didn't have time to write down all the things that they do, we have it available to them if they want to just take a look at it's page 5 of the newsletter that's in the chat,
Yeah.
has the housing access services description. So perfect, Dan. Thank you very much. Dan is very involved with a lot of our housing activities, and one of the biggest things. Well, he's got a ton of big things on his plate currently, but one of the bigger things right now is the lease up for the Mirasol Village multifamily housing project. And this is Alta California Regional Center's first multifamily housing project that we have done. And we're very excited about it. What are we looking at as far as move-in dates for that, Dan?
So we have, I think, 3 to 4 clients that could be moving in within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then by mid-March, the other 11 or 12 will be moving in. So
it hasn't become another full-time job. However, Dan is definitely experiencing, as a community services specialist for all these years, what service coordinators have to go through with all of the communication that he's been having to have directly with the planning team members, and getting everything aligned so that the individuals can move into these set-aside units. And this allows those folks that Dan's preparing, to move into these units to be able to live at an affordable rate for 55 years in those units. And that's huge. That can make the difference for someone's life, for the rest of their life. And so I just really appreciate Dan's really hard work on all of this, and then being able to work so collaboratively with the housing access services. We were worried in the beginning because we knew it was a supported living vendor that was going to be the one, and there was going to be confusion. Like, do you have to be with this supported living agency in order to activate those services? And that is certainly not the case. Like, this is an offshoot and a different type of service that is really looking to do, as Dan said, help support people being able to get in those units and help people to be able to stay in their housing. That's the main 2 points of it.
and real quick, Heidi had a question here about outlining offices for first step housing. They could, but only if it can be done virtually, right? They don't travel out to the outlining areas, but if there's issues that can be dealt with virtually, then yes, they can support those clients.
Yeah, the one of the challenges always is the communication with the other entities that are responsible for delivering things like, government entitlements, like our friends at Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. We don't always have the best contacts with folks. One of the beauties is that once you get into some of the smaller counties, like Nevada County, there's only like 1 or 2 people that are responsible for the housing in that county. So, Dan, I think that would be good as we look at, because Housing Access Services is new, is how well represented are we amongst the different counties with good contacts for them. And so maybe that's kind of a year 2 activity. And some of you outlying office, area folks, or folks that are outside of the Sacramento area that are service providers, if you have specialized contacts with folks and would be willing to share them, Dan Kilmer would be your guy as it relates to getting that information in and having it be shared so that more clients can benefit from things like housing access services.
Yeah.
All right. And then real quickly, the other thing we have going on, and Dan will be working on that, in the near future, well, maybe not the super near future, is we do have our other project down in Elk Grove as well. And so we're definitely taking a look at the process that we went through in order to do like the lottery and the lease up activities with Mirasol Village. And that was our first one. So we're really looking forward to the next one where we can learn from all the things that we should have done right the first time. And, we learned a lot. We learned a lot of lessons, and that's the way to do it, when you're trying to do something innovative and new. So appreciate having Dan, who has just had amazing follow through and supporting these clients that are getting into these units, and then also supporting the housing access services vendors. So very good stuff. And regional centers don't have these services, folks. Like, there's a handful of regional centers in the state that have a housing access services vendor. There's, maybe 10 to 12 regional centers that have active housing development, like we have, where we're developing multifamily units. So, and I am told that we are going to find out in the next 4 days what kind of CPP award that we are going to get for this year. So we've proposed a number of different things. I know Rima shared with you all last week about one of the specialized projects, but we are also looking at making requests to the department for specialized residential facilities to allow us to open them to help support our forensic population, to support individuals that may be coming out of Porterville Developmental Center, maybe at risk of going into that because of some judicial involvement, and people with substance use disorder support needs. And so, again, we will see what the department comes back with as it relates to it. Lake of the Pines right there, kind of right between Auburn and Grass Valley, is still on the table. That request is in to the department to support that multifamily housing development. And then we also have our little bit larger development that we're looking at doing in Woodland as well. And so for, Veronica's on here, right? I swear I saw Veronica earlier. And anyone that's ever worked or can you share anyone that's ever worked in the Woodland office? So across the parking lot from the Woodland office there, like to the left where they're building that housing, that's the housing development that we are proposing too. So it is like across the parking lot to our Alta office in Woodland. So it would be fantastic for us to be able to have that opportunity to have a large multifamily housing development right there next to where our office is. And trust me, that's another one of the arguments that we're making to the department. All right. There's some questions in the chat real quick, Dan, so maybe we can jump into those real quick. So Dan, are your services in conjunction with other services such as SLS?
Yes, SLS primarily, they are responsible for looking for housing. And there may be a situation where that worker is just not getting any inroads with housing, and we could reach out to First Step Housing to assist them. ILS for sure. And then, any other program where housing is, a goal, we certainly can make a referral to First Step to kind of fill that part of their program.
All right. Thank you very much for that and for the clarification. And then for those of you that are in Woodland or do serve Woodland, you might notice that there's already a very large construction project going on right there, right next to our office. And so our proposal is part of that phase 2. So just like our development on Richards Boulevard, which is we are looking at putting money into just a part of the overall big development so that we have set aside units for individuals with developmental disabilities, which is another reason why the proposals that Alta makes are attractive to the state of California, is that these are not pipe dream type of developments. These are developments that are already in motion, that already have a lot of entitlements built in, that are already well leveraged, and adding the DDS funds certainly kind of adds to that. So anyways, again, just fantastic work. We are certainly looking at doing more and more as it relates to housing. Another thing that came up during the meeting yesterday, and I just want to talk about it here because I see Helen's on and Kate is on as well, that shout out to Kate. Kate has been working on getting our vendorizations done for our social recreation programs and our swim schools. And it is so nice to be able to report all of these new vendorizations to our board of directors. And so it has been really challenging working on these because the social recreation service providers ways and expectations of billing and kind of having services authorized is very different than what we typically do. So Kate, just again, I wanted to recognize you, and I don't know how it seems to, does it seem to be working a little bit now that there's some flexibility that has been built into it as far as allowing for billing and authorization, that kind of directive that we got from Jim Knight?
Yeah, John, a lot of the social rec providers, and I mean, there's more and more that are willing to vendor with us. I think it's just a word of mouth that we are vendoring providers for social recreation again. And we've also contacted some of the older ones that we had, or the ones we had before 2009. And so they're slowly coming back. It's slowly, but it's surely. And Kate has vendored Safe Splash, and we have Dancing Dolphins and many others. And
I know I love reading the names off in the board meetings because they all have good names. So Kate, I guess anything else to add about kind of how the experience has been? Do you foresee that we might be able to get more of these vendors convinced to come on board in the future?
I think so. It's been very exciting to be able to connect with our community providers and their openness to partnering with us and supporting our clients. So I think with the directives that I'm hopeful that things will be a little bit smoother down the line for everyone.
Awesome. Well, again, and great work for Kate in doing those. You know, the more of these that get done, the less parent reimbursements have to be written for services, right? The more we can start sharing this information, the more people will start putting it into their plan. You know, right now, people are going to be starting to get their summer camp plans, for example, kind of nailed down in the next month here or so. So again, it is a rolling process of doing this, but Kate has really been dedicated to it and has really had to carry a lot of the weight of doing it. And so I just appreciate all the hard work. And I did mention to the board yesterday, and we're going to work on specifically what it's going to look like, but a landing page on our service providers page that will allow you to know which are the social rec vendors, which are the camps, and which are the non-medical therapy ones that we vendored. Because every regional center has a listing of all their vendors, but it's tough because social recreation vendors can be vendored under a number of different service codes, and ours are broken down under service codes. And so to make things a little bit easier for service coordinators, and I think about it, Shirley just sent me the updated list of all the day programs and all the changes that have gone on with that as well. We really need that immediately available, I think, to our children and adult service coordinators. So I know we send out our newsletter, and I know it says what the social recreation ones that are in our newsletter, but I think having an updated list on our website that families can be referred to will make a difference. So that's in the works here. We got to update. I want to update that first. I know that Rima has looked at a landing page as well for deaf and hard of hearing services on our website too. And so and I've also got to work with Dan actually in looking at adding some more housing information onto our website. Johnny Zhang and his team of folks, and Tracy as well, and Jennifer through the facilitating for the Coordinated Future Planning Initiative, created a lot of amazing resources. And our client advisory committee just did a fantastic housing video, and so we really need a good housing landing page on our website as well, so we can do things like promote housing access services, etc. Yeah, Adriana wants to know about updating the social rec master spreadsheet. Yes, we'll look at doing that as well for our internal staff. So but the main thing is want to get things on the website, want people to be able to, talk with families about it and say, oh, you can just look right there. That's the name of the ones that, and here's, we'll look at trying to maybe put their addresses as well for swim schools and things like that. So folks can get an idea of where the service is located. So more to come on website updates from us. All right. HCBS time. So Michelle, do you want to get started with it? And then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to share my screen. Hold on one second. Okay, John, can you see the directive there?
Looks perfect.
Okay, so I just wanted to touch base. We received a new directive, and this one is in direct correlation to the one that we've already talked about, this November 8th, which required policies and program design revisions to be submitted to the regional center. So that was due, that directive had that due by December 5th. So all documentation for revisions, policies were due to us for review by the 5th. So we received this directive on the 24th of January. And with that, there's 3 takeaways that I wanted to share with everyone. So I'll scroll down and we'll go through those. So the first one is a moratorium of new referrals. So it says effective February 6, 2023, regional centers shall issue an immediate moratorium on referrals and authorizations for new referrals for all services provided by a vendor that has failed to submit the required documentation for one or more of their vendor services. And we'll talk a little bit more about these once I read them through. So the next one is effective the day after, so February 7, 2023. It says regional centers shall begin contacting individuals receiving services in settings that fail to meet the February 6, 2023 deadline. Regional centers shall meet with those individuals to inform them that their current service provider is not in compliance and provide information about the benefits of receiving services from providers who meet the federal requirements. Together with the individual's chosen circle of support, the regional center and other members of the planning team will ensure that individuals are provided information and the opportunity and support to make an informed choice of alternate service setting. And then down here, we want to, future action for continued noncompliance. The department will issue a directive forthcoming to address service providers that do not have regional center reviewed and approved documentation, such as policies and/or program designs in place by March 1st, 2023. Corrective action next steps may include a partial withholding of regional center payments, which would be fully paid once all documentation is completed and found to be compliant. Continued failure to submit documents that meet the federal requirements may result in the termination of vendorization. So one thing I wanted to share with this directive is the term shall. So that means that the regional center is required to complete these steps. So starting in February 7th, if you are a program, and I will share the numbers in a minute, that has not been responsive to any of the emails and letters that we've been issuing, we will meet with, service coordinators will begin to meet with planning teams with clients to discuss this and let them know their options for current compliant HCBS providers. Let me stop sharing really quick. And I just wanted to touch base a little bit more. So currently we have 73 providers that have not submitted any documentation, that we have not received any information from. If you guys do receive an email or a letter, those are not generic letters. Those are being sent directly to you because you are currently non-compliant. So please do not ignore those. If you have any questions, I know Alicia and both of her support staff have been issuing if you're currently in the process of working with her, once you are compliant, she is drafting up those compliant letters to let you know for your records that you are compliant. If you have any questions on if you are or not, don't hesitate to email the hcbs@altaregional.org email. I'll have Alicia put that in the chat. Currently, our numbers, we have 293 providers that are not compliant with HCBS. And like I said, out of those are the 73 non-responsive. So this letter will go out to the 73 non-responsive. Alicia does continue to support with workshops, direct one-on-one support with a specialist. Also, she has office hours where she will meet one-on-one with you anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. The department's made it very simple with addendums that she can walk you through where you can be compliant by the end of the day. So don't hesitate to reach out for that support as well. And that's pretty much, I don't know if you have any other questions for me or anything else to address, John.
Not a ton. What has occurred since we had coffee with community services last week is that the department did call an emergency Friday afternoon meeting with the director of DDS. And executive directors were on there, and Michelle and Alicia as well. I think we're both on there too. And just expressing the gravity of it, and also explaining that, the department was going to be issuing this directive, and, looking at where exactly it was going to land as far as language. We had our follow-up meeting with DDS. What is it? We do it every Tuesday, I think, at 4:00. And so that is a weekly meeting that we're going to be having through the rest of this process. And we were able to give updates, largely 99% of them coming from Alicia in the meeting, and definitely, again, want to recognize the hard work that Alicia has thrown herself into doing all of this. And I think what I looked at it, and I was mentioning it to Michelle this morning, is that we've knocked the no documents list like in half in just like a matter of about 2.5 weeks, which is crazy. Like, to see that many people came off of our list in that short time frame, and appreciate it. Michelle and Alicia have been working on also training two temps to come in that have been supporting this process as well and reviewing documents. And then I know a number of you community services specialists have been tasked to reach back out to some of our vendors we know really, really, really well, but have still been unresponsive so far. And so, again, as I've said in these types of meetings, and I said during our provider advisory committee, typically if you attend a weekly vendor meeting, you are not on the list of people that have not completed your documents. If you attend our monthly provider advisory committee, same situation. But we do want folks to be aware of what's going on, and we want to be aware of the impact because we still have 293 that are non-compliant. And though the department did not explicitly say exactly what that pulling of funding would look like, we do know that, we're going to be looking at least a moratorium on some of those that have not submitted the documents as outlined in the directives. So those are kind of the consequences that are going on. Oh, look at that. Alicia just updated us. We have 4 more compliant in the last 2 hours. So actually, what I will do is I will actually throw it over to Alicia if she has anything else to add to what Michelle or I said. But I just, again, certainly want to commend the big effort that is going on right now. It is going on all over the state. Some regional centers are so behind on this that other regional centers are going in to assist them that are a little bit farther ahead. So Alicia, I'll throw it to you for any other comments.
Here we go. Okay. Like Michelle said, if we are sending you an email, it means that in the DDS spreadsheet, you are not currently compliant. I know many people submitted things over the summer. We are responding and letting people know that DDS has done their review, and if any of the federal requirements are not in compliance, we are emailing you. So you may have heard all good over the summer, and now you're hearing that you're missing stuff, but it's because DDS has done their review and has found that you are not compliant in one or more federal requirement. If you have sent in stuff, if you're getting emails with the directive, it means that we don't have any documentation for you. I had a home reach out this morning that said that they submitted stuff over the summer, but there was nothing in the spreadsheet. So don't ignore if a directive is sent to you. And if anything, ask question. It's better to ask than to find out 3 weeks from now that you only have a month to get everything done and compliant.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let's see. Giovanni, let's see. I am assuming that if the vendor did not receive any letter, it means the vendor is in compliance. Correct.
So,
Yes,
John, go ahead, Alicia.
Oh, okay. So we are almost done reviewing. Everything is reviewed that has been submitted. I have about 30 more emails to send out to say if things need to be corrected or if you're compliant. If you do not hear from me by Tuesday, you are likely compliant, but you can always check by emailing hcbs@altaregional.org. It only takes me 2 seconds to look you up and you can have that peace of mind.
I will say too that just because you don't receive the letter doesn't mean that you are currently compliant. The letter is reaching out to providers that have submitted nothing. So we still do have 289, like Alicia just updated us. So it is best to err on the side of caution and just send that email to confirm for your records as well.
Would you repeat the email, please?
Yes, it's hcbs@altaregional.org, and it is in the chat as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Again, this is taking up a lot of the energy right now as we push through this for the next, I guess, weeks that are left here. So with that being said, we're going to be providing weekly updates because we're updating DDS on Tuesdays, and we'll update you all on Fridays on where we are at. And again, just appreciate all the hard work that has gone into this. All right. Rate increases. Let's talk about that real quick. So we let folks know last week that this week they were going to be putting the rate increases into the system, and they did. So the rate increases have been inputted. The new ARM rates are updated. SSI rates are updated in the system. So people should already have updated authorizations in the system. and you should be able to, when you go to do your billing, like in the next week or whenever, it'll all have the updated January rates on them. If for some reason there is an issue with that and you feel like it's not in there, please reach out to your bill payer. If you can't get a hold of the person in accounting, you can even try to reach out to your community services specialist as well. We want to try to get these things addressed, but again, this is really just adding a additional percentage on to rate increases that have already occurred. So it's not like new calculations or things like that are being entered in. I don't want to get too deep into the information about this, but there was some guidance that came out from the department yesterday related to minimum wage and rate increases. And Michelle Ramirez was in a meeting with us where we talked about this previously, that if you've gotten your rate increase and then you get a minimum, you can still get the minimum wage increase on top of that, but we have to report that information back to the department so that when they go to give you your next rate increase, that they know what your current rate is. So again, it's not that the rate increases happened and therefore you don't get that minimum wage bump. The minimum wage bump would be, on top of whatever that rate increase that you've had so far is. So we're just looking at what the reporting back looks like to DDS on that. So that being said, though, I cannot tell you that, yes, it is another 25%. That is correct for the rate increase. What I can tell you is that, what is it? Jordan, did she say February rate letters? End of February? Was that it?
Sorry, I'm muting myself. Yeah, she said that, they would, everybody should have them by the end of February.
Okay. So I know, again, many of you want to know whether or not, it applied to you or didn't apply to you. Again, if you saw it previously and you're seeing it now, if you saw it previously and you don't see it now, there's an issue. Everyone should be getting that rate increase if you already got one. It would just be your next percentage bump. Eric, hand up. Yes.
Just one thing that some folks have or may remember, may not remember. The January increase text includes a provision that the right amount of that increase go to staff wages. And there is a directive back in, you can look at the trailer bill language, but I'm going to put the DDS directive in the link. And they want the same, you have to go back to the wage tables to figure out exactly how much weight of a wage increase you would need to give in order for it to be compliant. But I put that in there just so that folks are aware they would need to be ready to provide justification and safe documentation that they use the right percentage of the January 2023 wage increase to increase direct care wages, just so folks know.
Eric, would you say it's accurate that the rate increases basically across the board, across different services codes, were really weighted towards staff salaries? In the Burns study?
Yeah, in the Burns study, one of the biggest things for most, not all, but for a lot of service categories, the things that drove, if you received an increase, one of the things that was driving that was a presumption of an increase in staff wages. So that's true. But there's a lot of other factors that go into that. So I don't want to say it's just that there's some abnormalities with some providers where they got the wages totally wrong. I actually think there's some issues with this because it doesn't say what the look back period is. So how far back, for example, do you look at your wages December 31st, 2022? I don't think so. I think we made big increases in July after the budget was passed, knowing that this was coming. So I think that could be worded there. I have some questions about making sure that my agency is right and making sure that I give them the right advice to others, but just start by reading that directive and being aware that you're supposed to ensure that you spend a minimum amount of that increase on direct care staff wages to be compliant with the Burns rate study.
And I'm fairly certain that the rate questions at DDS, that email is for vendors as well, right? The rate questions one. I think you guys can send those to them. But if not, if there was a specific question related to it on our end, we can certainly connect with the department about it too. So thank you. Michelle, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I just, in the directive, it doesn't say specifically how much is expected that you give. And so there has been some talk around the CDSA membership around making a calculation based on your rate study versus your rate and seeing what that percentage is. And so I just didn't know if anybody had any updated information on that in terms of how to calculate how much of that 25% that you get, how much of it has to go to staff.
Michelle, that's what I was sort of referring to. You know, broadly speaking, I want providers to be aware of it, but they're actually they don't provide a formula with clear definitions around how to do the calculation or insure it. So I would really hope that, you know, regional centers or other advocates could really try to make sure that everybody's in agreement around what that formula is. And as I understand, you have to refer back to the original rate tables, which a lot of people don't do. So they made it, there are some issues with that calculation for sure. And I haven't heard anything more about it.
Oh, I love it when a spicy topic comes up at 11:53. So I feel like what we need to do is we need to take a few of you and figure out what you're planning on doing, and then we need to do our, hey DDS, is this good guidance that I can share with the rest of my vendors as well, or do you have any suggestions? What would that be something providers that you would be maybe willing to do? Like, you know, if a few of you are interested in showing me what you guys are looking at doing, or do you want to handle it through CDSA?
Well, I'm meeting with Barry Giardini today. We're just going to kind of go over a little sample because we were thinking of maybe putting together a group of vendors to discuss it and see how everybody's calculating it, because there's two parts of the rate model. There's the direct service wage and what that turns out to be, and then you have your full wage rate study rate, which encompasses your admin staff, your supervision time, all of those things. And so everybody's kind of questioning, well, which part do you look at, or do you look at the whole? So I can get a little clarification from Barry hopefully today, and then yeah, I think it'd be nice if we could all kind of know what we're doing, and if a DDS has any ideas around that, it would be nice to know, you know, so that we're all not.
Or something that would be okay with their auditors later on when you guys all get audited. That would be nice. So talk to Barry and ask him if he wants to handle it or at least get some feedback from the department by me submitting one of your guys's, you know, how you're planning on doing it. And I'd be happy to do that. And so Michelle McDonald will need to kind of follow up on that a little bit, I think, because of, well, and it's going to be Helen too. It's going to be all of you guys. Jordan, everyone, because it's going to impact a lot of different service providers. So let's follow through and make sure that we can get, the department's been pretty good at giving us technical assistance on some of these things lately. We were recently able to, one of our large service providers, we were recently able to change their rate for them and be able to preserve them, even though we thought it was going to be kind of hopeless. And the department, again, with their responsiveness has really helped out lately. All right, so let's see here. I want to touch on transportation real quickly. So, and we've got still a number of client services folks on here as well. We have shared the directive that came out related to transportation and the monthly reimbursement rate. And so I'm not going to go into that and share the screen again related to it. However, just know if you go on DDS's website, it's right there under the directives. So with that, there is a number of outstanding questions related to, for example, service providers are allowed to be able to bill either methodology, either monthly rate or the whatever, you know, traditional rate that we have for folks, like their vehicle service hours. However, when you have individuals that are sharing routes or sharing a ride into a place, that makes it really hard to calculate those types of things. Additionally, looking at it as well, the fuel and figuring out how fuel is going to be reported, whether or not we're looking at like that average fuel amount or the actual fuel amount, like the, you know, that type of. So what I will say is, especially for those in new case management and the rest, we have not put out more guidance to our service coordinators related to this, because I think we're on the cusp of some additional guidance from the department. I got draft language sent to me last night of some of the discussions. And so right now, Helen, what did we report this morning? That we've heard from 4 different vendors, I believe, so far. Is that right? About the monthly rates?
Yeah, 3 vendors so far
3 vendors.
that I have that we received certifications from. And
Now,
so, yeah.
Yeah, and if you are a transportation provider and for some reason you didn't get a copy of the certification form, basically that's just you as a provider saying we are interested in doing this. And one thing I will repeat as it relates to the monthly rates for transportation is, as it relates to discussions with the planning team. If what you are providing to the clients is not going to change as far as your transportation, it doesn't have to be a big planning team discussion as it relates to it. The service coordinator is going to need to change the authorization. The issue, and when you really need to make sure that the service coordinator and the planning team are all involved, is if because of the fact that you are now changing from traditional to alternative services, you are looking at changing the amount of service that you're planning on providing to clients. That is when we need to ensure that there's that planning team discussion that is going on and ensuring that we are utilizing the correct resources. So for right now, we are continuing to process a bit of a backlog as it relates to the transportation service requests. We're plowing through those. And, we will be looking at transitioning over, but even the authorizing of services, what kind of subcode we'll be using, and being able to input the rate amounts, that like 1 unit rate, 3/4 unit rate, half rate, and quarter rate. They're still working out how that's going to work in our system. So again, we don't have a lot of activities for our staff to do. And so that's why we haven't put out anything more about it until we get a little bit more clarification from the department. I saw in the chat. All right, let's see. So is there an addendum on the 880, or is there an update on the 880 addendum? I think Michelle McDonald mentioned this being worked on earlier this month. And then I've talked to a few service coordinators and they have no idea about the monthly rates. So again, right now, because we are in the process of kind of how we're going to operationalize it and what kind of instructions they're going to get. And Tony, you're welcome to unmute yourself. But I think the main point we want to make is that you need to have a talk with that service coordinator if it's going to result in a change of service. If it's not going to result in a change of service to the client, and this is just you choosing to bill this way because it makes more sense based off of the amount of trips that the person was going to be making, then that's certainly fine. But just want to make sure that folks know that we do want to include the service coordinators in those types of situations.
Yeah, there's a few things I've because we're trying to get the fiasco from alternative service December to how we're going to bill in January. And I'm running quite a few clients that have no quote unquote billing, but I'm not going to just stop service because they need service. I didn't know how it's going to relate to the January billing. If I'm just going to go all mileage, am I going to, I just confused.
We're basically going to basically, I believe, let you all retro back to whatever makes the most sense to you. And if that means that you'll be able to subsequently bill a higher amount because of a decision that you made in February, it does retro back to January 1. And so again, but we can't do the activities that need to be done to get authorizations in because we don't have the mechanism built, because this was developed by the department on a kind of a very short term, and again, still needs to get figured out a little bit more. What I will say is I just certainly do appreciate all of our transportation providers that have continued to make sure that our clients can get to where they need to go as we've, it is a little bit of, I think Tony said nightmare, but it is a nightmare transitioning all of your authorizations from one methodology to another, and then only for the department to then release another methodology after you've begun so much of that process. So
correct. We had a meeting with my staff and managers the other night, and we figured out if we're going to do the multi, we have, I think 5 or 6 that will be in the car sometime with someone that we want to do monthly. And then what we predict, since I bill miles wise, it's easier for me. I just do the miles that they're in the car by themselves, and then we don't bill for the rest of it. And that way there's no overbilling, no double billing. And that way, to us, it's a simple way of just taking care of it.
Yes, and simple in transportation. I haven't heard those words in a while.
You know me; I try to keep it as simple as possible. I am not a smart man,
and you certainly do, and I appreciate that. So again, I will say, we are continuing to look at the transportation. Michelle's making strides as it relates to the 880s. We'll do an 880 update during our next meeting, right? But Michelle, do we have something real quick?
I was just going to recommend, because I've been working with my specialist on what that looks like as far as the, the alternate billing that we're talking about and the traditional 880 rate and all that. So I recommend just touching base with your specialist, and then we can move forward with those questions at this time.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the staff that also shared things today as well. And I hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll look forward to talking to folks next week. Take care.